Welcome to the Elite BSC podcast, where our entire focus is helping commercial janitorial contractors succeed. You want a growing company, a thriving team, and healthy profits, and we are here to help. My name is Jordan Tong. I'm the founder of Elite BSC, a company dedicated to helping janitorial companies grow and thrive. I also serve as CEO and one of the owners of France Building Services. France is a janitorial company employing nearly 600 people. Since 2007, we grew from 1.5 million to more than 20 million in annual revenue and built what I think is one of the best teams in the world. The goal of Elite BSC in this podcast is to give owners in the industry a vision of where their company can be and the information and tools to get there. I want to share what I have learned over the years to make this a reality for you. Hey, it's Jordan here with the Elite BSC podcast. So this is part 4 in a 5-part series asking the 5 most important questions you will ever ask about your organization. This comes from a book that was written by Peter Drucker and has some commentary from Jim Collins, Philip Kotler, and some others. And this book I would encourage any of you all that listen to this and have found any of this even remotely interesting or helpful to pick up this book. It's such a short book. I mean, we're talking 100 pages and 100 easy pages, a lot of blank ones in there. And it's an easy read, and it's really simple. But often the most profound things in life are often very simple. And I think as we think about what it means to be a successful company, there's an endless supply of books on the bookshelves, but in reality, very simple questions and very simple answers really to those questions are often what we need. And it's not that we need something new, it's that we need to return to the things that we know we need to be asking and really to develop answers and execute from there. And in this book, I think really highlights that. The simplicity of it is certainly there, but also the profoundness in terms of, hey, these really are the questions. And it's really easy to not be able to answer these questions well. So question number 1 was, what was our mission? And if you go back a few podcast episodes, you can listen to that, talking about what our vision, mission, values, that sort of thing is for the organization, how that sort of lays the foundation for the rest of the house that we're going to build on. And question number 2 was, who is our customer? And so, this is a good question because there's primary customers that would be our end customer, and then really defining who that is. So there's some sales and marketing application there. And then a decent amount of supporting customers, like our team members, for instance. And then question number 3 is, which we covered in last week's episode, was what do our customers value? Like, what is it that's important to them? And in particular, the idea that that's not a question we can answer on our own. Like, we need to go to the customer to be able to answer that particular question. So with sort of that in the background, you have the foundation built, you have hey, here's our customers, primary and supporting customers. And then we found out perhaps what our customers value. And so now we know like what the purpose of the organization is and what customers value, supporting and primary customers. Then we turn to the question number 4 is, what are our results? So, and maybe another way to say this is, how do we know that we have executed on the value question? How do we know that we have accomplished our mission and we've served our primary and supporting customers in a way that meets the value expectations that they had? And this is a tough one. So, we've talked about in the past with Elite, KPIs and various things we should be measuring. And there's a lot of validity to that. But one of the traps that we all fall into very frequently is measuring our success based on our P&L. Or usually like company growth, like just from a top line revenue standpoint, and then our profitability. And those become the 2 primary ways that we measure our organizations. And, when I say it like that, you can see how lopsided that is. I mean, think about if you measured your health, like how healthy you were, by the only thing you did was you weighed yourself and you took a blood pressure reading once a month. Now, those two metrics are important, and they do matter, and they may point to the health in other areas, but there are plenty of other aspects of your health that need to be monitored on a somewhat regular basis to get an overall picture of how healthy you are and what things need to change and where you might need some help. And the same is true in our businesses. So Drucker says each organization must identify its customers, which we talked about a couple weeks ago, learn what they value, which was last week's question, and develop meaningful measures and honestly judge whether, in fact, we are executing on those things. And so as we think about some of these, so let's again keep in the background of your mind the idea of your mission and vision and who your customers are, and then what those different types of customers value. And there's a few ways to look at this. So there's really two different kinds of data that we can gather, or two different ways to maybe two different types of results. So one of those is going to be quantitative results, and the other is qualitative results. So let's unpack those a little bit. Quantitative are the ones that resonate with me a lot. I'm an engineer by education, and my brain just operates in that way. I love numerical values and preciseness and clear lines and boundaries and all that stuff. And so, measuring, I think this is why using a growth, like top line growth in your P&L from profitability is so attractive to so many of us, because it's so clean and easy, and we can see, yes, that's good, or oh no, that's not good, or oh yes, we met that goal, oh no, we didn't meet that goal. And it's very quantitative in its measures. And so I think there's very much room for quantitative, and we need those measures. I mean, you can say that quantitative measures are definitive standards. So Drucker says they begin with categories and expectations and tell an objective story. Quantitative appraisals offer valid, hard data. And that is very true. They offer very hard data. And so you think about it in the organization, okay, what does success look like? So for instance, let's say we're talking about our primary customers and the things that they value. So let's say that one of the things that they value is not having complaints that they're having to deal with from their people internally that are related to the cleaning. And so perhaps one way to quantitatively assess that is to track the quantity of complaints, for instance. That's a possibility. And there's been some efforts to do that, and companies have used various systems in order to do that. Or perhaps they want stability in the cleaning contract. They don't want there to be this constant turnover of staff and just sort of this up and down. So maybe there's a measure of employee turnover that we're tracking on this particular account, and we look at what the turnover is at those particular locations. And we see if it's within a certain number or range. And so from an operational standpoint, you could probably think of a handful of these more quantitative numbers. Some of them would be lagging indicators, and some of them would be leading indicators. But these would be helpful. But now let's flip over to the other type of data that we can collect, which is going to be qualitative data, which is less objective. It's less numerically precise, I guess. And what we're trying to do, it's not less valuable by any means, because we're dealing with people, and so necessarily we're dealing with subjective things. And so this, perhaps for us in our industry, this might be more important than some of the quantitative data, because we need to know how the people who are our primary customers are feeling and how they're perceiving what we're doing. So Drucker says qualitative measures address the depth and breadth of change within its particular context. They begin with specific observations, build toward patterns, and tell a subtle, individualized story. Qualitative appraisals offer valid, rich data. Although sometimes more subjective and difficult to grasp, they are just as real, just as important, and can be gathered just as systematically as the quantitative. So let's give an example of this. It sounds maybe a little bit highfalutin. So we wanting to know the perception that our customers have, and from a how are they perceiving us, and so we could go about trying to track and measure that. And so let's give just like a really basic, obvious example of this is that we could go and do satisfaction surveys with our customers. Like we could have, all right, our, let's say our top 20 customers, we want to have a once a month or once every other month assessment where they give us a score on maybe 2 or 3 items, and we're judging how they perceive us. And so there's a sense in where the data, we're trying to put it into a quantitative form, but it's really a qualitative sort of data, and we're trying to put it in a way that we can measure it and look at it. And you could do this in various ways. So at our company, we use a Net Promoter Score. Is something we're doing on this. It's a very subjective sort of question. But then it reports back to us in a quantitative way, and we're able to assess how we're doing. So, one of the measures, we can look at turnover, like, are we losing accounts, attrition of accounts? What's our retention looking like with customers? We can look at our profitability. We can look at inspection scores. But then we can also look at some of these qualitative measures and see how are we doing there. And this all this together begins to paint a picture of how are we really executing on this whole thing of what our results need to be. And you can see also what do our customers value, the question number 3, really influences the things that we should measure. And so we often, as business owners and leaders, can get caught up in what we think is important and what we think is necessary to keep the lights on, etc. And we can lose sight of the things that our primary and supporting customers find value in. And at the end of the day, if we're not executing on those, we're going to always struggle. And so I think turning the question and looking at those particular customers and what they value, and then identifying what results do we need to be looking at that would mean we have executed well on what the customers value. So, and let's take one other example. Let's look at supporting customers here, and let's talk about our team members, for instance. So I think it's really helpful if we would engage with our team members and find out what is valuable to them about the job. Like, what are they looking for? What makes them want to stay here and stay engaged and do a good job? How do we keep them around? What makes them feel fulfilled, et cetera? And let's say we go down the list of some of those things. So, and let's say some qualitative things emerge that are of interest or of value to them. Well, we can start building things and measuring results that are tracking those particular pieces of qualitative, that qualitative stuff that we're aiming for. So maybe it's, they want to feel like they're part of something, or they don't want to feel isolated or alone. Just to give an example, because that's something that can easily happen with a dispersed workforce. And so perhaps there are certain things we can put into place. Maybe it's, weekly or bi-weekly or monthly pizza parties or for a particular crew, or, maybe we start tracking how often managers or someone within the company are making touches or interactions with various team members, and we start looking and tracking that information. So you begin to think about, I suppose it sounds like I'm rambling here a bit, and I guess I am, but when you start to unpack the first question, or I guess it's the third question, the question about what they value, it really begins to shape what the results should be. And so then you can spend some time thinking, all right, we thought for a time we should be measuring X, Y, and Z, but really we should be measuring A, B, and C. And so this very logical thinking through this, and I would encourage you to go through this process. So if you've answered some of the previous questions, it's helpful to now turn to this one and be like, hey, what are the things I should be measuring? What are the results I should be looking at? And maybe you already have some of those in place, and now maybe you need to turn and look at, okay, am I doing stuff and putting energy and focus into areas that I shouldn't be putting focus into? And maybe there's some things that need to change on that end. Drucker talks about, he says to abandon anything is always bitterly resisted. So we often don't want to give up things we've been measuring or doing or putting a focus on. People in any organization, he says, are always attached to the obsolete, the things that should have worked but did not, the things that once were productive and no longer are. They are most attached to what I call investments in managerial ego. Yet abandonment comes first. Until that has been accomplished, little else gets done. The acrimonious and emotional debate over what to abandon holds everyone in its grip. Abandoning anything is thus difficult, but only for a fairly short spell. Rebirth can begin once the dead are buried. 6 months later, everyone wonders, why did it take us so long? I think he's right on. We can get so entrenched in the patterns of things that we do and the results that we're looking for that we forget to ask those questions and maybe reshape or kill off some of the things that we had been doing. And going through this exercise, going through these simple questions, maybe gives us a little bit of the traction to be able to do that. So I'd encourage you, again, to pick up the book. It's going to be much better than listening to me reading through that, but I think you'll find some very practical and applicable things for you. We've got one more episode that we'll do next week that will wrap this up, and then we'll move on to something else. So I hope it's helpful. If you can, if you need any other resources, reach out to me, Jordan, at elitebsc.com. Go to our website, elitebsc.com. We're here to help janitorial companies grow and succeed and thrive in the industry. See you next time. If you found the information in this podcast helpful, please like and subscribe on whatever podcast platform that you're using. If you would like more resources or help to grow your cleaning company, head over to elitebsc.com. We have loads of articles, videos, free tools, coaching options, and a lot more. If your company is greater than $500K in revenue and you want to take your learning experience to the next level, check out our mastermind group. You can learn more about that at elitebsc.com/mastermind.